Hopefully that thumbs up was for me. I got everything ready to go. We are go for launch.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the November 19th, 2025 meeting of the Henrietta Town Board. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Here.
Councilmember Belanca,
Here.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford, Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin the meeting with a silent prayer followed by a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I'd like to approve the minutes from the preceding meeting on November 6th, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. First up, we have a public hearing for a proposed local law to amend the zoning code of the town of Henrietta to authorize the creation of and to promulgate regulations for historic districts within the town. So they're based off of discussions at previous meetings. We did update the law, so we'll be putting this out for this final version for next meeting, which I believe is the 10th, December 10th. That's correct. Okay. Basically we've updated the law with regards to making sure that the section of historic site with regards to demolition also applies to contributing properties in a historic district. And let me just explain what some of these terms mean. So in a historic district, you have contributing and non-contributing. What that means is the historic district is set up with certain parameters. So in this case, it's, historic properties from 1818 through 1925, approximately. Some of them, there's some circa in there. But that's essentially the category. In this case, it's in the West Henrietta Hamlet area. Sometimes they create districts, like cobblestone, things like that, but this is essentially multiple styles in that area. So if I have a building that is not currently designated historic, and I'll use the Cartwright Inn, for example, the house is designated historic, but the inn, they removed that designation some time ago on the request of the then owners. Once it's in the historic district, that would be considered a contributing property because it meets that criteria and helps create the overall historic nature of the district itself. Essentially, they're properties that are eligible for designation within the definition of the district. Non-contributing properties, on the other hand, do not. So there's essentially two types. There's vacant, so there's no structures on there, and nor is there anything that historic that happened there, or maybe a historic structure that was demolished that has been identified. So, for instance, Chapman Corner Park was the site of the former Chapman Hotel, so that one is historic. It's not fully vacant because you have the former Three Sister ice cream that stand there, but that's an example where even though it's vacant, you could still be a historic property because of what once stood there. But as an example of a non-contributing vacant, the portion of the RHA ball fields that are included in the district. There's no structures in that portion there. And then you have the non-contributing properties that have structures, you know, so maybe it's a house that was built in the 1960s. It's outside the parameters of that district. What'll be interesting is some of the older houses, you know, like, again, from the 50s, for instance, they could be deemed eligible, or excuse me, historic, but not actually be contributing to the district itself because they're outside the parameters of that district. But so when you hear us talk about, you typically hear that the first primary distinction is contributing and non-contributing. And then within the contributing, you'll have just contributing, which again, they could be eligible, and then designated. Those are ones that are on the registry. One last little twist on there, even within the registry, there's actually 3 different registries. They could be local, state, or national registries. So a lot of stuff to digest, but basically, we're going to have this in the next public hearing is actually specifically for the West Henrietta Historic Hamlet, that the historic district that we're creating for the Western Hamlet. But before we can create that district, we needed to put in the laws as to what governs a district. One of the things we were looking to do then is we wanted to reduce some of the procedural burden for historic homes. Well, especially for the initially starting, we're looking at, okay, you've got a bunch of these homes that are going to potentially come into the district. So we looked at ways we could lighten the bureaucratic burden on the property owners for people who haven't already designated their property. So these are the contributing properties. And then as we looked at that, we were talking with the clerks and the historian and the folks from the Historic Site Committee and said, well, you know, we could potentially offer this to all the homeowners, even those with the historic homes, a way to reduce the bureaucratic burden when they need to modify their homes while still protecting the historic nature of the property. So that's one of the changes that you'll see in this law, is that we are looking to reduce that process. And basically, as part of that, we're creating a style guide. You know, this is literally a style guide. It basically says, it's not saying, it's not regulations and rules and what you have to do for your house, but it's just styles. There's I think it was about a dozen different architectural styles within the district, because you know, when you span that number of years, well, first off, people were building Greek Revival and Federal and you know, different styles of homes at that time. But then also when you're spanning you know, over 100 years, obviously different house styles come into fashion and out of fashion. And so you'll see a broad mix in the West Henrietta district. But again, they're all, I'll call them period pieces, right? They're, like I said, as far back as 1818 and forward. So so the idea is, if for instance, I'm doing a fence, I want to put up a fence. If I'm putting up a split rail fence that matches essentially what's in there, it shouldn't take 30 some plus days to get approval to get a fence permit to put that in, right? We need to be able to shorten that for folks, and so we've been working on ways to do that. So but like I said, the goal is to protect the houses, to protect the historic nature of that area, while imposing the least amount of burden as possible. That's our goal. And you know, one of the things I talked about previously is, you know, unfortunately in the East Hamlet, which is the intersection of Lehigh Station and East Henrietta Road, we've lost a lot of the buildings that were once there. mostly through fire. But the West Hamlet has a lot of historic properties still in the hamlet. So, for those who aren't aware, the West Hamlet is essentially centered around the intersection of Erie Station Road and West Henrietta Road. It extends much further along north and south on West Henrietta Road than it does along Erie Station. But the other thing we did based off of feedback, we in the areas where it was out on the ends where it made sense and it wasn't going to potentially create issues, we tried to remove some of the non-contributing properties so that those individuals are not involved. And you might ask, why do you have non-contributing properties in there at all? And the reason is if I've got a whole bunch of historic properties and then I have a non-contributing property in between, you don't want something coming in there that's going to completely detract from the rest of the historic district. There's already this concept under seeker about the character of the neighborhood. By having it part of that historic district, it actually gives you more ability to address that. And so, for instance, under that and under the historic protections, that's how a previous town board was able to deny the addition. They were going to insert a Dollar General immediately to the south and in between two historic homes, and it would have completely changed the neighborhood. And essentially, as the historic site committee as well as the town board felt very much for the worse, so they denied that application. By doing it in the district, it just gives us more ability to handle things like that. So, with that said, I'll first open it up for any questions, comments to the town board. Dan, I think, and just to, I think we put in all of the changes with regards to that, and Becky might chime in on this as well. I think we got all of the changes in with what's attached here, right?
From what I read, yes.
Okay. Did we, Becky, based off of our discussion, I don't know what it was, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5:30. Was there any changes that needed to be to the base law, or was that in the subsequent one for the West Henrietta district?
That would be in this law. Especially if we end up changing it for historic districts and historic sites, historic sites in general, that has not been addressed in this.
Okay. Yeah, so again, what we talked about is we had something in there for a reduced procedure for the contributing, and one of the proposals was to extend that to not just the historically designated buildings within the or sites within the district, but to all historic sites across the town. And to give people a feel for what that means is right now what happens with what's called an Article 10 vote is if you want to do an alteration, modification, or addition to your property as a historic site owner, you submit the plans, you apply for the building permit, it gets kicked up to the historic site committee, they have to review the thing, they make a recommendation to the town board as to whether it's going to be on, then the town board votes on it as what's called an Article 10 hearing. If it's a demolition, we actually have to call for a public hearing first. One of the things that, as you start to get into some of the stuff, as you look at what's the intent to some of those protections and where are those changes occurring, they could either be a minor change or they might not in any way affect the historical appearance of the building. I will note for local historic designation, we're concerned with the exterior of the building only, not the interior. The state and federal typically also are concerned with the interior of the structure as well. But so one of the ideas on that is if that's the case, and if that's what the Historic Site Committee believes, then it shouldn't have to then wait till the next town board meeting and be approved at a resolution. And so the current law has that in there for the contributing non-designated parcels. One of the discussions that came out from the workshop and subsequent to the workshop meeting is, do we want to extend that to that same simplified process to the Historic Site Committee, or not the Historic Site Committee, sorry, to historically designated sites? And I'm in favor of that. Someone asked, well, why didn't you offer that in the first? And I said, I didn't know that that was on the table. I'm again, all for protection, but also trying to minimize the procedures and process. So I don't know what others feel. And I could hold off on asking that question until we hear from the folks, but I will say in general, that certainly aligns with my, call it style. So
I think that falls in line with what we're trying to do is make it easier, and the Historic Site Committee has expertise to make those rulings.
yeah. Now, one of the things, because ultimately it's the town board, the idea will be when they send the letter recommendation back, what'll happen is if any of the town board members object, we can't take a vote on it, but if any town board members objects to it being approved without an Article 10, then it will go to the Article 10.
Okay.
And then we would vote on it at the town board meeting.
Okay.
But that way, you know, in case we ever have a renegade Historic Site Committee chairman, I kid, but you know, the point being there can be a difference of opinion. And there might be some reason that, you know, the town board feels strongly about a particular property and wanted to make sure it's protected. But all right, with that, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to talk about I see a couple historic property owners out there. Do you want to talk about the benefit of having a more simplified procedure or a shortened procedure? Whether that's you feel that a benefit, go ahead.
Michael Heading, live at 5628 West Henrietta Road. My wife and Julie and we got our home actually listed on the state and national registries. I think we're one of the only 2 properties in town that has that designation. And the development of the historic district is all positive in our eyes, and for good reason. We get better protections from encroachment, like the project Delphi Hill with all the apartments. And with streamlined procedures, our intent was always to restore and work on our property, make it authentic. So having simplified procedures to get grants and all that kind of stuff is a benefit I think that everybody should take into consideration and want. So
yeah, and thank you, Mike. And I'm going to follow up on one of the things you said. So there's one of the things we put in the town code is that we have buffering when there's an empty parcel that's going to then be developed. We instituted buffering. It's one thing when I buy a house and there's an industrial site behind me and I know it's an industrial site, right? But if it's an empty industrial site, for instance, and someone's going to then build a factory, you don't want them building it right up to the setback as close as they can to residential homes, and even more so to historic properties. And so one of the things we did when we created this, we call them transition bufferings. When it's adjacent to a historic property, that buffer gets larger. And then one of the things we did with that Delphi project is because of the cobblestone basement walls in a lot of these historic homes, we basically said, not only do you have to be outside that buffer, but you can't even do any earth moving inside that buffer Now there'll be a little bit of like grooming, but we told them do it with bobcats and small machines. We don't want any of these heavy bulldozers or earth movers within that first 1,500 feet, because the vibration could adversely affect the historic home. So those are it's protections not only to keep historic properties around, so the owners don't just get, if they're subsequently sold, that the new owners don't destroy them, but it's also to protect them from encroachment, to protect them from adverse effects of other development. So again, same thing, that Delphi area is, let me rephrase it, was currently zoned industrial, and they came in with this trucking warehouse proposal, and we were able to deny it because of the potential adverse impact on the historic homes by having all that heavy truck moving. Whereas if it weren't for the historic protections, we probably would not have been able to block that one. So just letting people, make sure people understand that it's also protections for you as the homeowner, at a historic site. So is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this subject? All right, so, based on head nods and further comments, that sounds like what we'll do is then tomorrow I'll write up what that change, because we just need to insert some of that language into the other sections on historic homes. And so I'll send you what that potential changes, so that what we'll be doing then is we'll send out an advertise for a final public hearing, especially with regards to the next law, because that will go out to all the homeowners in the district to make sure everybody is fully aware of what's going on, because again, it affects within the district. It affects not only the historic property owners, not just the contributing properties, but it also affects the non-contributing properties as well. So then, hearing nothing further, I'm going to close this session of the public hearing for the proposed local law to amend zoning code for historic districts. But we're going to keep the public hearing open till the next meeting in December. Next up, I have the public hearing for the proposed local law to amend the zoning code of the town of Henrietta to create the West Henrietta Historic District and to promulgate regulations specific to that district. So again, the first one sets up the framework within which we create the districts. And then this local law actually creates the district itself. So I see that Becky's preparing to pull up the map. So this is the district. North is to the left. And basically the red indicates their non-contributing property. Orange is those vacant properties that aren't contributing. Green means they're already designated historic, and yellow means they're contributing properties but are not currently designated. So you'll notice we pulled out. We wanted to keep in the old school building on the far west end of the district on Erie Station Road, but there was no reason to keep all the homes in between. Like I said, some of the homes sandwiched between two historic buildings, we felt it's important so that they don't detract from it, but that building is kind of off by itself and large enough that we didn't feel there was a lot to be gained by including those intervening properties. And as we've said, we're trying to minimize the impact of this while still maintaining. The reason we have some on the north end, and why, like, for instance, we included a stretch of the Delphi project, is because we want those, as those commercial developments come in, we want them to be in an architecture that does not detract from the district. Because they have such a significant potential impact on, as being the entry on into the district. we thought it was important to include them in there. So that's why you'll see those ones in there. We did not want to cut those out, because again, we want to make sure that, we don't want to see a tall, modern building go in there that totally detracts from the historic district. So, any questions on this or comments on the district itself? And if you need to walk up to look closer at the monitor, feel free. All right, I don't see any anybody who has any questions on that. Then Becky, could you bring up the style guide? And this is far from finished, but we wanted to put together some stuff just to show you kind of what we were looking at. So one of the things we're doing is we're putting all this stuff in as an appendix so that we'll be able to update that without having to go through a whole local law change. We do that with a number of things like our fee schedules and stuff like that. So there's actually, yep, perfect. Okay, so one of this thing is just showing is, so it lists the architectural styles that are there, and then, we're going to pull some examples, so the first one, looking at it from here, I can't quite read it because it's small, but I can see from the style, it's Greek Revival. So we pulled up some example of Greek Revival architecture, and the whole idea with that is, just to give some samples. Let's say you're as one of these non-contributing developments come in and they want to look to say, well, I want to put in something that's not going to detract from the district. They'd be able to look at these and get some ideas of, if I build something along any of these styles, then I'm not going to detract from the district. And for those who were around during the Delphi stuff, you saw that, we made them change the look of their buildings so that they did not clash with the surrounding historic properties. Want to scroll down a little? So obviously we have a lot more to go there. I just was getting a couple of samples. Then we're going to have sections on, so like one of them, this next one is on fences. So you can see some examples that talks about, these are split rail fences that they're allowed. You scroll down a little bit more. And then we have two categories of split rail fences, because like the bottom ones, like the vinyl, whereas those wouldn't be appropriate for a historic property, they would be okay for a non-contributing property. So the idea is, it doesn't detract. It's not historically accurate, but at least it doesn't jump out at you as conflicting with the district. Similar, go ahead and scroll. Well, actually, before I just go back for a second, I will note that we talk about different materials. We gave some examples of different materials. So like if you look at some of the cementitious boards, you can't tell they're not grain. They do some of the new modern building materials, composites and other stuff. So in a lot of cases, the vinyl that's shown in the one that would be okay for non-contributing, that's just your plain square vinyl fence. It looks fake, for lack of a better way to put it. The one in the upper right corner, that's actually a cementitious board. When you look at it, it looks like it's a painted plank, because they press that in, and you can see a lot of new building materials that cover that. So we just give these as examples. Again, it's not saying I can only choose these. It just gives, one of the thoughts is, as people do this stuff, and especially people in the non-contributing properties who maybe don't have as much experience with the historic properties as the owners do, we wanted to give them guidance to say, hey, when you're looking, don't waste your time going, in stuff that's going to potentially create problems. Look at things along these lines. It's to help folks and to give them some guidance on how to be compliant. Okay, go ahead and scroll. And then same thing with the sheds. You know, we're looking at, you know, so the agricultural looking sheds, very appropriate at that time. You know, some of the cedar sheds, and those are examples of those ones would be fine on the various properties. One of the things we talk about and why we, again, have the list of those sheds, you can sometimes find ones that, you know, are built in a particular architectural style. And so obviously if it matches your architectural style of your home, all the better. It doesn't have to 100% agree, because again, you see plenty of old farms around that their house might be Greek Revival, but their barns in agricultural are your typical, you know, barn type structures. Scroll. Then we give a couple examples of ones that the two up top are examples of ones that would be okay on non-contributing properties. Again, they're more modern materials. One's essentially the vertical, like it's almost like roof siding. But then the next three are examples of ones that would not be acceptable on any property in the district. And one is like just a corrugated metal shed. The next one is one that's cobbled together from different materials. And then the last one is just brightly garish colors. And I realize that's subjective, which again goes back to why it talks about it. This is a guide. Ultimately, it would be a decision of the historic site committee as to what is considered garish, because certain styles of homes did have some bright colors, but typically not like a Greek Revival, for sticking with that example. So the idea is we want to give some examples of what is allowed, what would be not allowed, so it helps guide the people to it. But again, I want to emphasize this is a guide, it's not a requirement. So don't think, oh, I'm going to have to choose. One of the other things I hadn't had a chance to put in this document, but we've been reaching out to all the paint manufacturers, you know, so like Benjamin Moore has a Williamsburg collection. Sherwin-Williams has a set of collections. Now, a lot of them are interior paints, but for particular styles of homes based off the different time periods. And so we're putting those in there just, again, to give people an idea. We're not saying you have to choose those colors, but it just gives you an idea of colors that are consistent with the time period. And you're typically not going to be denied. It can't be guaranteed because we don't cover all the different instances, but you know, like I said, if you're going along with the style guide, then chances are you're going to have less issues. But again, if you want to, for instance, paint an American flag on the side of your barn, if the historic site committee says that's a perfectly fine display, even though it's not in the style guide, it's up on the barn. And I bring that up because I happen to know Mike has that on the side of his barn. You know, so like I said, it's not in any way a menu. It's just a guide to give you some ideas. Any questions on that? We cover fences, sheds, siding, architectural styles. We didn't cover roof. We had talked about, but to be honest, you pretty much any roof style you're going to find here in New York would use. Roofing hasn't changed tremendously. There were metal roofs back then. There's metal roofs today. There was asphalt shingles. You know, we talked about, well, like if you go out west, you see the clay tile type roofs. I don't think you can even buy those here. So those wouldn't be consistent with this area, but it didn't seem worth our time to deal with roofs. But I don't know if there's any other categories. If someone, maybe we take a look at windows. I don't know. Just but I'm not sure what other thing we would need in the guide, but again, like I said, it's to try to help folks. So if there's something that anyone out there thinks, even if you think of it later, send me an email at supervisor@henrietta.org. Hey, it would be great if you put some samples of this into the guide. So, and like I said, the good thing is we can update that at any time at a future town board meeting by just updating it, putting it forth, the update as a resolution and putting it into the guide. So any questions on that? So when we put forth this law, we did update it. It has the list of the properties that are contributing properties, the list of properties that are non-contributing properties. If they already have a SHPO designation, we've put that in there. That's State Historic Preservation Office. If they're already on a registry, we put the registry. For Mike, I didn't realize you were also national. I put state. I knew you were on the state. In theory, we could put all three on there. Right now, it just says state. But if we want, I can add national as well. But the most, as he mentioned, every other one is just on the local registry. But any other questions? One other thing I'll note that Mike mentioned is this past year we were pursuing grants to help people to get additional funding to help with the restoration of key historic properties. And one of the things we ran into is a lot of them have additional requirements attached to them. They have to be in a qualified census tract. This area is not. They have to be in a environmental justice zone. This area is not. They have to be on a downtown or on a main, not downtown, but a main street in a village or a city. This area is not. Well, one of the good news is some of those grants, if they are within a historic district within a town, we would be eligible to go after that grant. So this next year, assuming some of those grants are issued and have that same opportunity to pursue them with for the historic sites, we would go after that. And as we did last time, we reached out and said any property who wants to participate, and we had 4 properties who were going to participate. And basically what happens is the town submits the application, we get the grant funding, but it's done. Each of the properties would have to come in. Any of the eligible properties would also be able to participate. However, the requirement is that they would have to submit their application to be designated prior to the submission of the application, and they would have to be designated prior to being able to be reimbursed for those expenses. But otherwise, any currently historic designated property would be able to partake in it. The fire hall was one that was going to join. One of the things I'll note is like when SHPO looked at that building, for instance, they said there had been too many changes for the state designation. But from the historic, if the historic site committee feels it's good, which based on the initial discussions, they would have absolutely, my impression was that they'd have enough votes to designate that property. In that case, then, like I said, they would be eligible. The grant just requires you to be on any registry. It doesn't require state or national, at least the grants we were looking at last year. So, because we understand that it's expensive to own a house. I will also note that I've put forth a letter to the New York State Association of Towns to see if we can get on the legislative agenda the idea of a real property tax law exemption partial exemption for historic properties. I'd love to see, like, even if it's just 5 to 10% reduction in your taxes, because again, there is cost to maintain that. Now, one of the things that when we were talking about it, when I was talking about with the attorneys there, is that it would have to be, they'd have to be registered and they'd have to be compliant. And I just say that because not all especially when properties change hands, sometimes the new owners don't keep up the property, don't take care of it, and they'll change windows, for instance, without getting permission. To get that discount, you'd have to be registered and be compliant with that registry. It's very similar to like the ag discount that you had, the ag exemption. It's the same thing. In fact, one of the things that I talked to them about is there's an interesting thing in the ag exemption that if you switch it, if it just goes empty, there's not an issue. But if you take land that had been getting the agricultural exemption and you develop it like as a subdivision, you not only do you lose your exemption, you owe I think it's like the previous 5 years, you have to pay back that exemption. And so that's the idea of, sort of somebody had a historic home and they demolished the home, they would owe the back 5 years, or again, I don't remember whatever the look back is, but the idea is that they would have to pay the look back on that exemption. And it's both a carrot and a stick that way, right? Maintain your historic property, we're going to give you a discount. If you're going to do something to remove the historic property, we're going to hit you with a penalty. So we'll see what happens. It's Albany. Who knows what Albany's going to do, but it's worth a shot. So any other questions?
I think it's a good idea to have the baseline of protectable items for fences and paints and everything, give people an idea what they can do. So that appendix will probably be really neat.
Anything else?
I did have one, and I think you addressed it. It was about the paint selections, and I know we talked about it at workshop. When it actually goes into the style guide, there will be those options for people to look at, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I put the two together. I didn't want to put, right now I've only got the two. Craig reached out to a couple of the other, but I didn't, one of the things we have to be careful as the town board, we're not supposed to endorse particular products. So we're reaching out. I didn't want to put any of them in until I've given everybody a chance to respond. But the two that have that we have back already, we've heard back is Benjamin Moore and Sherwin-Williams. But we'll be reaching out to Lowe's for their Valspar. I forgot what their other internal brand is. Home Depot has Bear, and I forgot what other. So there's, I assume Dutch Boy's still a brand. I've not seen it in a long time, but we'll basically try to get all the brands, the major brands to if they have such a palette, to provide that, so that we're not recommending one or another, but it just gives an idea of the colors to pursue, so to speak. Any other questions? All right, then same thing. I'm going to close this session of the public hearing. We're going to keep this public hearing open because we've just updated the law. It needs to sit in essentially its finished form for essentially roughly 2 weeks before the last public hearing and voting on it. So we will be hopefully voting on it on in the December meeting. If not, it means because we had yet another change. But all right. So again, I'm going to close the session, but keep the public hearing open. Next, we have a proposed local law to amend the code of the town of Henrietta to update and modify penalties for parking violations. So our parking violation numbers haven't changed in a long time. In addition, some sections of code treat all the violations the same, and we don't believe they're all the same. So for instance, we believe in some areas, thanks to state laws, we've been able to increase the, so for instance, parking in a handicap spot without a handicap tag, that's a higher fine, and it also includes a surcharge from the state. Parking in a fire lane is typically a higher penalty than some of the other ones. So one of the other things we wanted to do is like we do with our fee schedule, we're gonna make a fine schedule so that it's easier to keep the fines up to date with inflation and or changing priorities in terms of trying to address, if we're trying to discourage a particular behavior. All those have to be within there's New York traffic law does dictate certain ranges to avoid unjust or excessive penalties. But like I said, we'll be updating our traffic tickets as well to correspond. We're almost out of tickets, so we'll be ordering them soon. One of the things that, we have through the Monroe County Sheriff, the special attention detail, one of the things that, we've been receiving complaints about is when people with handicap tags try to park near the store, there's people in those spaces without handicap tags. And so the special attention detail deputy has been going around and visiting our large retail areas, and when they see illegally parked cars, that they have been ticketing. So that's been generating a number of tickets. So any questions, comments on those? All right, then hearing and seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for the proposed local law to amend the code of the town of Henrietta to update and modify penalties for parking violations. Last, we have a public hearing for the proposed sale of easements on town-owned land to National Grid for transmission line upgrades. And so I'll just start coming up. This gentleman from National Grid, I'll note that there were some questions. There were some questions raised at the workshop with regards to some of the prices. As not being any kind of real estate expert, I did ask our assessor to meet with them this morning. She looked over the proposed numbers, and while there's some disagreements, up plus or minus on the different values, in talking with Amy, she said that overall it's a above fair market value for the properties, which again, we're required by law to get at least fair market value. So they've exceeded fair market value in her opinion. So it does meet. Now, like I said, one of the properties that I think is a little low. There's other properties that are high. Mm-hmm. When you add it all up, it's more than the fair market value of the combined properties was what our assessor Amy Yorsted said. So go ahead, if you could introduce yourselves and explain the project and what we're looking at.
Yeah,
could you pull the microphone closer? Is that
okay? Thank you for having us.
Hold on, I don't know that it's on. Is it
not
green?
on? It's green.
There's a mic there also that you might want to use. That can come on.
Yeah, it might be. That other one might be easier. Or you just have to be close. Yeah.
Try not to chew on.
There we go.
Okay, here we are.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, Supervisor, board members, community, for having us tonight. My name is Mike Lennon. I'm representing National Grid on the real estate acquisition side. And I have.
And my name is Kevin Bernstein. I'm the attorney for National Grid. I've been working on the project that gave rise to the need to obtain the easements.
So with that, we do have a slide presentation. It's redundant to what was presented at the open houses this summer, both in town and the surrounding communities. So I'll run through it rather quickly if we want to dive into deeper questions, but at least those at home or others that aren't familiar. So this is the Mortimer to Gola. Those are the two substations on the north and south, just south of town. And we're proposing to rebuild the existing 109 and 110 transmission lines through the community. You go to the next slide, please, Becky. These specific rebuild in town is part of a larger regional upgrade of the infrastructure to increase reliability and capacity. This slide here with the QR code, if you wanted to post it to the town website, would give people information on that larger scale effort. move on to the next slide. What we'll focus on this evening is just talking about the overview of the project within the community of Henrietta. Give an example of what the changes people might see as part of that upgrade with the structure types, the real estate process that we're going through with individual property owners, but more specifically here with the board for the town-owned, 7 town-owned parcels that we're proposing to get easements from. And then I'll hand it over to Kevin to discuss the permitting process. So if we can go to the next slide, please. The map on there just gives you a general idea of where on the north end, the Mortimer substation, just into Brighton on the north side of town. The entirety of the project runs through the community, south into Rush at the Gola substation. There are 2 existing lines, 109 and 110, which we're going to be rebuilding. Generally in the existing easements, but part of the discussion tonight is when you rebuild these things is to modernize those old archaic easements to the typical standards of today, and how we've come up with a way we think minimizes impacts as best we can to residential and private properties by utilizing some of the open space, the greenways within Henrietta owned by the town. I just wanted to point through a couple of bullet points here. The age of these lines that jumps out of the bottom bullet, the 110 line is 75 years old. The 109 line is 100 years old. So that's kind of precipice for the need to rebuild these and get to a modern standard. We can go to the next slide. I'll show you how most of the community will see this will simply be in the change of the style of the structures. On the left-hand side is what you're seeing in town now, mostly on these lines is the wooden H-frame, which are going to be replaced with the single monopoles, the metal style that you see on the top of the screen. There is a stretch in town where we'll be running the 109, 110 line parallel to each other, which is what you see in the bottom right picture, which is 2 of the monopole structures. So even though to meet the modern standard, we're proposing to widen the easement in some areas, when you go from that H-frame structure to the metal monopole, it actually reduces the physical impact on the ground, but we do have to maintain an easement to meet that modern standard. Let's dive into the town-specific parcels on the next slide. And again, as I noted, there are 7 parcels within the town that are owned by the town that we're proposing to get easement from. This one being here in the area of, that's Parker House there. And we are proposing in this area to shift the line outside. We'd still be impacting and have easements on some of the backyards through that community, but utilizing that greenway that is the aqua highlights that you see there, to obtain a wider easement or in some cases, new easement from the town to support that and alleviate some of the pressure.
Yeah, so in some of those, today, the wires go like right through over the middle of people's backyards, right?
Correct, they do. And then to widen what typically in these areas is a 50 or 75-foot historic easement to the modern standard we're seeking here, which would be a 100-foot wide easement. If we left those structures and poles in place, and in some areas we do have to do that, there's just no room. But in areas like this where we had an opportunity to shift, rather than have this new easement go right up to people's back decks and have to remove sheds and structures and those things, to minimize that, take advantage of the greenway or the open space that the town owns, and purchase new easement from you folks to try to alleviate that. So that was the goal. That's the process that we've gone through. And now at this point in time, we're seeking your approval.
So I'm going to just want to bring up a resident or 2 brought up to me a concern. So where those lines used to go through the middle of their backyard, they have their garden and their shed at the far back of the property. And now that it's moving, the shed at least is supposed to be relocated. They're concerned about the possibility that, like, will the shed survive the move? If they have a concern like that, should they reach out? Who should they reach out to?
Myself, Mike Lennon, I'm the real estate acquisition manager. Actually, in the audience, we have Brian Venton, who's one of our acquisition agents that's been working intimately in these neighborhoods. I'll give you my cell phone number now if you want. It's 603-325-5869.
That's fast.
Yeah, sorry. 603-325-5869.
Thanks.
Wasn't fast intention. So, but we'll field those calls. All of the private property owners have received mailings and been approached as best we can. Agents like Brian and myself to kind of work through those one-off issues on the property. Sounds great to your point, Supervisor, that, yeah, we shift over to take advantage of the green space, but that's where they have a specific structure or something else that we need to work with them to relocate. And we have been successful in many cases of obtaining quotes and other things to relocate those to other areas of the property with that line shift. It's not perfect in all cases, but to this point, we've had some decent success.
Yeah, and sometimes it's, a parent owns the property and gets confused by some of the stuff. And so you're often will be working with their kids and the parent together to try to, some of the ones we've been fielding calls on, that's what we've
Yeah,
seen.
we welcome and try to engage with family-wide when we get a sense that somebody may, whether I'm talking too fast or they're not quite
No, you're not
understanding,
talking too
that
fast.
we engage with family members that it might help guide them through. I often, with a husband and wife sitting side by side,
Right.
I connect with one and the other one is a little remiss, and then you might step back and let them explain it to each other
Sure.
in a calm, relaxed fashion, and then we re-engage with those folks to try to settle things and hash them out. So, yeah, thank you for that note there. So it's what we deem is here is a less impactful route in any given individual circumstance. It could be slightly different there.
So Mike, I do have one question on that.
Yeah.
Let's say you go to move this structure and it's not movable, it's gonna
Yeah,
be
we've got
destroyed.
some
What if it
landowners
gets
have,
destroyed? What do you do then?
our preference is that folks take care of this on their own in advance and obtain quotes to do so. Admittedly, our guys come through. Their focus is on rebuilding a transmission line, so their capacity or capability to relocate these things is not as good as a private contractor that the landowner knows and trusts, that they can
Right.
work together well in advance. And that's why we're out, a year and a half, 2 years in advance of construction to try to give folks as much time to digest the project,
Right.
To seek solutions to
Yeah.
some of these, what we would call encroachments in
Right.
those easements. I'll point out that a lot of them are already within the existing easement. We're still trying to gracefully work with those people, take advantage of this opportunity. So that ultimately we have a clean right of way with a new transmission line centered in it. And all of these obstacles are moved out once and for all.
Okay,
So
much
it's a welcome
appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah. So we'll go on to another slide to give it a couple of more examples. We're going to go through each of these. So the photo on the left gives an example where we actually do deviate from the existing easement area and structures to try to minimize impacts to certain structures. It does require us to work with some landowners to purchase their homes, and we're in the process of doing that. So that one on the left there is to precipitate an adjustment in the route that is outside the existing easement. So there is some new right-of-way in that case being requested from the town. On the right, you see running along Galway there. The highlighted aqua again is the town parcel. It's not shaded, it's just highlighted there. But by shifting the structures outside of those backyards, we can actually totally vacate some of the easements in that case, which is a great example of a win if we're able to utilize that town parcel. We go on to the next slide. This is an example on the north end of the project, the far north. This is not truly a shift in the lines. The town somehow came across some land up there, zoned commercially, and this is a case where we're simply looking to rebuild and modernize the easement. When I say modernize, get it to that 100-foot or 125-foot, depending on what we have going on in there. And then finally, on the right there, this is an opportunity that, as you'll see, the town-owned parcel is in the middle of the photo, but it's the top portion, and the ability by shifting there onto the town, it frees up space in the Overland Trail neighborhood there. So you go to the next slide there, the last two parcels. If you're familiar, this is near the Coptic monastery there. And these are opportunities, again, for us to shift away from Cedarhurst and out of the Chesley Meadows neighborhood there on the right-hand side. So that's the narrative. As you pointed out, I appreciated that the discussions on the valuations were settled and seemed to meet the town standards. So if we could go to the final slide for me, we'll just kind of summarize that process. And this is, I think you're quite familiar, but I'll take an opportunity to just, again, working with you folks to try to minimize impacts. And I don't mean to be dismissive in the fact that I know our suggestion of what this great solution is and minimizing impacts could lead to cases of individual hardship, so I don't want to minimize that, but generally speaking, it spares a lot of folks from having to deal with us at the easements. The second bullet point there talks about how we came up with these fair market valuations. We did hire an outside third-party appraisal company, Stroke Appraisal, to help us make these offers, not only to the town, but the same methodology was used for the private properties in the community, taking recent sales data by land use type, by the parcel size, to come up with these calculations. And so I wanted to stress that the same standard is being used both for the town and the residential folks that myself and Brian and others are working with. With that said, we've provided the easement documentation to the town for these 7 parcels. It's a little tedious when you get into it because there are 7 separate documents that would have to be signed. And I did want to take this opportunity to point out the project is going through the regulatory process, which Kevin will talk to. It has not been approved. And so at this time, we're working to secure option agreements. And so everything that we're discussing now will ultimately, if all goes as it should with the permitting process, 2 easement agreements. But at this time, we're looking to secure option agreements that help support that. And I guess with that being said, before I turn it to Kevin, one of the notes, maybe we can touch on this at the end, what the next steps for us might be, what more information the board may need, but we'll get into the Q&A and see what else is there.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Again, Kevin Bernstein. I am regulatory siting counsel for National Grid for this and numerous other projects. There you go. The process of actually obtaining what's called the Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Need from the Public Service Commission is a multi-year process. It starts actually with the engineers and the designers, and they spend quite a bit of time looking at kind of things Mike just talked about, the route, the width of an existing right-of-way, and these lines have been around for 75, 80 or more years. When they were first put in, the standards were different for right-of-way width. And as you know, we had the Great Black Hat in 2003, and the Public Service Commission started to take a pretty hard look at the width of these kind of transmission lines to make sure that the lines are reliable and safe, to minimize outages, or where there are outages as a result of storms, that they're rectified quickly. So that's one of the reasons. And that's one of the things that the engineers look at in terms of designing a line like this. But there is a regulatory process, a permitting process, if you will. So we actually submitted our application in April of 2025. And it takes a while for the Public Service Commission, the Department of Public Service, to actually review all those documents, and they determine that the application is complete. We have everything in the application that the regulations require, and they did that in September, late September, actually, about 2 months ago. And after that, the agencies, parties, there's those who want to participate in a settlement process, start meeting and talking about ways in which we can develop permit conditions to mitigate any impacts associated with the facility. Now, that process really focuses on the route, the corridor, if you will, of the line. And it does result typically in a Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Need. And that has to ultimately go to the Public Service Commission. They have a public meeting, they vote on it, and they issue an order issuing the certificate. But that's not the end of the process. The next step for us, you go to the next slide, that might help. The next part of the process is actually developing what's called an Environmental Management and Construction Plan. The lingo is EM&CP. And basically that has very detailed design information about exactly where the structures will go, how we're going to access the structures, how we're going to minimize impacts to wetlands, streams, archaeological resources, agricultural resources, a number of other resources. And that will have the details, and that will actually also go out to public comment. Landowners will get notice of that when it's prepared, but it's prepared after the certificate is issued. And that's just to prepare it is a several month process. And then even before it gets on the commission agenda, it takes 2 or 3 months. So that provides a lot of detail, and there are a lot of drawings and maps and a lot of information about how the project actually will be built. that information is actually then provided to contractors to make sure that they know exactly how to build it. And they know exactly what mitigation measures to comply with. And, that does take a while. And once we get approval for that, then they start construction. And here, as you see, in Henrietta, at least, construction is slated to begin in 2027. Now, I also will say, if you go back one slide, there are other approvals that we need in terms of making sure that we do things right off of New York State public highways. So we need highway work permits from the DOT. If we are disturbing more than 1 acre, as I'm sure you all know, because you are, I think, an MS4, we will have to prepare a stormwater pollution prevention plan. We'll probably work with your planners and your engineers to review that, and because we'll need MS4 authorization before we can get it from the DEC. We also, if we impact a certain number of wetlands, have to actually get permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And so those are some of the approvals that we'll get throughout this process, particularly once we get the authorization from the Public Service Commission as to the route that they are certifying. And then, of course, you saw, I think one of the last slides you saw, there was a railroad there. I think the Livonia, I'm not sure the full complete name.
Yeah, LAL, so Lakeville, Avon, Livonia, or Livonia, Avon, Lakeville.
Yeah, it's changed names over the years, I'm pretty sure. So, if we come within their right of way, then we need to get an occupancy permit. If we cross them perpendicular, for example, we'll need to get a crossing permit or license agreement from the railroad. So those are some of the things and many of the steps that we need to take before we get to the point where this project can actually begin construction. And that's where we currently are. There actually will also be many opportunities for the public to comment. There already have been open houses. It hasn't been noticed yet, but I'm told by an administrative law judge who kind of presides over this whole thing, that there will be another public hearing likely on December 11th. We'll let you know when that notice is issued. It might be issued in the next day or two. It might be virtual. I don't know what the ALJ actually decides he wants to do. I wanted to let you know of that date. And I just learned of that date today, actually. So that's the process. That's the process we engage in terms of with the community and with the regulatory agencies.
All right. And that, can you go forward one slide? So it's too small print for me to read from here, but where is the property acquisition? And on that timeline. So obviously construction starts in 2027, so it has to be before that.
Yes, it happens side by side. The actual process before the Public Service Commission does not address real estate needs, but we know we need all of our easements wrapped up by the time we start construction.
Right.
That's an absolute must.
Right. So that's why I understand you're getting the options, so that way you can then trigger it very quickly. This just gets into I'm just looking at it from a budgeting standpoint.
Yeah, so the option payments, if at the next meeting or so, we come to terms, we would give the 10% option money up front in advance. It's non-refundable.
Right.
We anticipate vaguely regulatory approval summer of 26. And with that schedule, the goal there would be to secure and wrap up all of those easements in the second half of 26. To your point, to have free and clear easements ready to go for construction
Right.
season of 2027. So 10% option payments at the time of signing, anticipating those full easement payments being made after approval second half of 26.
Great. That works for my budget. No, Linda, I haven't already spent them, but I know where I'm going to. Linda's our finance director, if you haven't met her yet. So, all right. Any questions? We'll start first from the town board and then I'll open it to the public.
No, I think they covered everything that I had.
Any questions from the public? Okay, so unfortunately, because of the short time between meetings, there's a statutory requirement that this be advertised so many days in advance. Because we only had a 2-week gap, we essentially have to, because of Thanksgiving, this particular meeting gets moved up a week earlier. So we did not meet that regulatory requirement. So we will be having on the, and December 10th. We, but we won't, so like I said, we'll keep the hearing open. I'm not gonna have you re-present unless there's somebody, we'll just jump straight to questions, you know, but we'll have the thing ready in case there's somebody who shows up who missed the presentation either here or at the public hearing and wants to see some of the stuff, but otherwise we won't bother to have you present. We'll just open it for questions. And then we'll be able to vote at that meeting. So, Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a few things I wanted to throw in that weren't highlighted. 3 of the 7 parcels are Parkland District property. They're owned by the town via its park districts. Mr. Bernstein and his team at Bond, Shennick and King did an excellent job of researching this to make sure that we did not have alienation of parkland issues. And based upon the various court decisions and opinions of the New York State Comptroller previously issued in similar situations, I'm certainly convinced and can recommend to the board that we can go ahead with this. That said, there are certain restrictions even with parkland districts. So one of which is we're having this public hearing because the land is worth more than $1,000. Another of them is that we can't sell the easements for less than we acquired the parkland. And I researched the deeds, and these parcels were deeded to the town with no consideration. They were, in essence,
Dedicated as,
leftovers from various developments.
yeah, so these were the dedicated from like cluster development and stuff like that.
Yes. And so, just for the record, that condition should be noted as satisfied. We will meet the statutory requirement for advertisement because we missed it by a day, but we're re-advertising for the next public hearing, so we should be fine there. And unless something.
The other thing you had mentioned previously, I believe, is one of the other requirements is that any proceeds from the easements for the parklands, those funds can only be used for either additional park land acquisition or improvements to existing park.
Well, I'm not positive about the improvements to existing parks, but by the time we get the money, we'll be positive about that.
Okay.
Even if we need an opinion in the New York State Attorney General. But I can tell you that it's really $60,000 of the entire amount comes from the parkland parcels. So it's it's not negligible, but it's not the bulk of it.
The good news is if we get the recreational trail program grant, there are there's some easements as well as some land acquisition involved in that, which would be an additional parkway trail. So we could use the funds for that. So even if it has to be new acquisition, I don't think that'll be a hardship because of that project.
And then finally, generally when the town sells land, and specifically with the park district, with the legislation that covers the park districts, the town board, in the case of the sale of the land, has to make a finding that the town doesn't need the land for anything. In this instance, these are easements. So I believe that you don't have to find that the town has no use for the land, but I do believe that the board has to make a finding that the easements do not interfere with the town's use of the land. And I think that's been demonstrated tonight through this presentation.
Yeah, when we were first talking with these gentlemen, one of the things we talked about is there's a couple places where there are paths that connect the neighborhoods to the elementary school nearby. And none of those paths are impacted by this. So, I mean, obviously, people walk on the sidewalk under power lines, crossroads under power lines all the time. The point is, none of the structures impede those paths. So that's one of the things we did look at early on as part of that design. And then most of them, they are, again, open pathways. And in some ways, this actually helps because they're going to keep vegetation clear under those. We won't have trees growing up and blocking the path. So it does provide for the original purpose of most of these parkland district lands is they call them green belts, and it's specifically that it's to provide a buffer between two neighborhoods and to provide a path along which people can walk on public land as opposed to through someone's backyard. So, and some of them contain creeks and stuff like that, and obviously they're not going to put their stuff in the creek itself. So,
Very good. And so prior to the next meeting, I'll be glad to assist in preparing a resolution
sounds good.
that includes this.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions, comments from the public? Then again, I don't remember if I already did this, but if not, then I'm going to close this session of the public hearing. As mentioned, we will hold it open for the next meeting because we didn't meet the statutory requirement with the short span between meetings. So, all right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and we'll see you in December. Joe, you're up first.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 20-389, 2025 to approve and or ratify the following agreements.
Am I seconding that?
You are.
My eyes are open. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
I get it. Finally got open. Thanks. Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 20-390, 2025 to authorize bills payable and any associated contracts, agreements for November 4th, 14th, 2025 through today, November 19th, 2025.
Second.
And I'll note that most of those bills were for our pension benefits. So everybody's for the state pension benefits.
There's also been a decent amount of paving activity going on. That's just finishing up. I think we have one paving project left that's actually on the agenda. So any other questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca.
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 20-391, 2025 to award the Veterans Memorial Bridge Pedestrian Bridge Improvements Project bid to Bridge Brothers Incorporated.
Second.
So the two bridges, one is a replacement bridge for the bridge that was washed out in the massive storm. This is the bridge that leads from Town Hall, essentially in between Town Hall and the Senior Center over to the band shell. That bridge, as I mentioned, was washed out in that massive storm. It was an old bridge and we were going to be replacing it anyway, so it essentially did the demolition for us. The other is a new bridge that we're going to be putting in place parallel to the road bridge coming out of Memorial Drive. And the purpose for that is today there's not a good shoulder on that bridge for people to walk. This especially becomes problematic at the 4th of July. As everybody's exiting, now you've got foot traffic and vehicle traffic mixing on that bridge, not a safe condition. So we'll have a new pedestrian bridge just to the east, so that people exiting on foot will not have to be crossing the bridge with all the traffic. So, and a shout out to our Deputy Director of Engineering, Luke Bushin, who's been doing the design of this and the calling out for the quotes from the companies, putting the bid together. So doing a lot of the work on this. Very appreciative of all the work he's doing. Any questions, comments? And hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 20-392, 2025 to accept the dedication of roadways for the Lehigh Ridge subdivision, section 1.
Second. So first, I'll thank Rob for filling in. Mike Stafford was going to be on virtually, but something changed at the last minute and he was unable to get on. So Rob will be, in addition to his own resolutions, will be handling all of Mike's resolutions as well. Lehigh Ridge is the new development south of Authors and Nevins. And so we're accepting section 1. This section is complete. And later on, we're actually going to be accepting a new section to continue the loop. In talking with our highway crews, it'll be much easier for us to plow by going up, let's say going south on Nevins, around the loop and back out to Authors and then reversing direction, as opposed to having to come in, hit the T-bone, plow, back up, come back out. So that second exit has to be paved and plowed this winter because there's more than the minimum number of or maximum number of homes that can be on a dead-end street under New York State fire protection laws. So like I said, you will see another one for Lehigh Ridge. That road is not done, so that's what we refer to as a deficient dedication. And in that case, we're going to hold money to make sure that the road gets finished. But we're not allowed to plow unless it's a public road. So we'll be taking dedication of both these roads. Any questions, comments? Then hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 20-393, 2025 to authorize Marathon Engineering to provide professional surveying services to prepare a subdivision map of the Middle Road properties.
Seconded.
So for those who don't remember what this is about, basically we acquired new land on Middle Road that is around behind people's houses. And the reason we acquired this land was for our new fill site where we take road millings and pile them up. We didn't want to put them right behind people's houses, so we guaranteed I think it was 100-foot buffer. The issue is there's nothing this town board can pass as a resolution that can't be overturned by a subsequent town board. One of the residents brought up that concern. So what we said is, since we're not going to use that buffer, we will, if you want to purchase it, we'll sell it to you, because then a future town board can't overturn that. So at least 2 of the property owners are taking us up on that. The thing we will make sure that it's crystal clear is when they buy that land, it doesn't move the 100-foot buffer. Essentially, they are purchasing the 100-foot buffer. So in that case, the fill site could be right up to their property line. But again, it's 100 foot further beyond away from their house. So those property owners, they're paying, we had a simple appraisal done on the land there. There's two different land values depending on whether it's wetland or non-wetland. And then they're going to be splitting the cost of the appraisals. So, not the appraisal, sorry, the cost of the survey. So, go ahead.
Kevin Yost, 1474 Middle Road. Good evening. Is this the same place where there's gates where they take the brush or a similar spot?
So the brush is going to the former fill site. So if you
Yes.
look, there's kind of a mesa there. That's all of the millings from decades of milling. But we don't want to go any higher there, which is why we acquired a new fill site. So the brush is going to that former site. The new site is further south, closer to the thruway.
Yeah, this is still on the 63 acres that extend from Middle Road along the thruway down to the Lehigh Trail that was acquired by the town in '01.
Yeah, so there were two parcels the town acquired. Both of them fit that description. One is right along the thruway, the other one's further north. I believe the '01 purchase is the one where the original site is. The secondary purchase right along the thruway, I seem to remember, was more like 2017, 2016, 2017, somewhere thereabouts. But yes, most of the land in both those parcels, most of that land is wetland. As you go east from the fill sites, there's a huge drop off, and it's down into the south branch of Red Creek flows through there and north up into the park. So. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kevin.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Bartley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 20-394, 2025, to hire Krista Construction as construction manager for the new Henrietta Dog Shelter project.
Second.
So, based off of, the discussion at workshop, I went back and I worked with, John Radisi from Krista. We were able to get the per month down a little bit. But then I suggested to him, one of the things that we're very tight on our budget on this project. And one of the fears I have is if we have a particularly harsh winter, our heating costs are going to be over because when it's a masonry building, so we have to keep it warm, so that the masonry will cure properly. And so what I suggested to him is he write the contract for 4 months. So it comes out to, the contract itself is 58,600, so 58,600. The not to exceed number 87,900 includes those last 2 months. But obviously, if we're running over on our heating charges,
Right.
I've explained to him that we're gonna, as much as there's services help, especially with all the stuff we've got going on and all the stuff our staff is doing. But of all the stuff that's critical to that thing getting finished, as I said, no offense intended, but yours is the least critical. Obviously, we can't say no to the electrician or the
Exactly.
mason or the plumber. If we have to, because we refuse to go over cut budget. If we have to cut, we're going to cut those last 2 months. And that's about, in talking with the general contractor, if they have excessive heating, it's probably around 30K, which is what we would say from the 2 months.
That's great.
But I figure this way we approve the not to exceed number now. And again, if we need to cut it, we just won't the only thing they ask for is 30-day notice.
Okay,
So that gives them time to reassign their crews if they're not gonna finish. The other things we did to help keep the cost down is normally they have a construction trailer on site. We're gonna use the offices in the sewer building next door. And that they'll operate out of there. So again, it'll save the cost of having a trailer on site. We won't have to have a porta potty there. So
it's very fiscally smart and saving $16,000 or $15,000 a month is good. Good job.
thanks. Any other questions, comments? Then hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 20-395, 2025 to authorize the supervisor to sign and submit supplemental agreement number 3, amending the existing 5-year snow and ice agreement with the New York State DOT for 2025 through 2026.
Second.
So basically, the way they set the contract covers what they cover, and then we just update the labor costs, material costs, because those go up every year. So that's why this is Amendment 3. Because again, it's each year we do this. Any other questions, comments? This is for basically doing the snow and ice removal on New York State roads. So we plow and salt the, Jefferson Road, West Henrietta, East Henrietta, Erie, and Lehigh Station. So seeing and hearing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 20-396, 2025 to declare items surplus material from the Henrietta Public Library.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 20-397, 2025 to authorize the supervisor to sign the 2026 intermunicipal agreement with CHS Mobile Integrated Healthcare.
Second. So it's essentially the same agreement as last year with the updated numbers. It's the amount of the levy minus the adjustments due to certiorari and or SCAR hearing resolutions. So any questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 20-398, 2025 to close out the capital project for the DPW roof replacement project and return the balance of the funds to the general fund.
Seconded.
Any questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca.
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 20-399, 2025 to make appropriate budget transfers and adjustments to the 2025 adopted budget.
Second.
So basically, as you get near the end of the year, you make adjustments. A lot of times what will happen is if you're taking your best guess is what the costs are going to be, some stuff runs a little long, some stuff runs a little short. You transfer to the stuff where I have the fund balance to where I don't have the fund balance to make it balance out. One of the things we do not do in this town is use it or lose it. If they don't need the money, we don't spend it, it gets returned to the balance, and then essentially it's in our funds in excess of contingency, we then allocate it towards the budget next year. But I've always believed as management, one of the worst things you can do is have a use it or lose it policy, because then people spend money wastefully. As a result, our directors do a good job of staying on top of their budget expenses, and that's why every single year we've come in under budget. So shout out to, again, everybody in the town who is always looking out for ways to save money for our taxpayers. Any other comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 20-400, 2025, to acknowledge receipt of the October 2025 revenue and expense reports.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 20-401/2025 to hire personnel.
Second.
I'll just note, we've filled a number of open positions in our DPW, which is great because we've got the snow removal season coming up, and a number of those newly hired individuals already have their commercial driver's license, which is important because you need that for the big trucks, the big plows. So any questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 20-402, 2025, to adopt local law number 12, 2025, to amend the code of the town of Henrietta to update and modify penalties for parking violations.
Second, yep, sorry, just making a note for later. Obviously, we had a public hearing for this. Any further comment or question? And hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 20-403, 2025 to adopt the fine schedule for the town of Henrietta for the remainder of 2025 through 2026.
Seconded.
So the previous one, updated lives, I mentioned one of the changes we made was to move the fine schedule out of the sections of code itself and into its own schedule. And this is now approving that schedule. Any other questions or comments?
I have one.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you to consider, it sounded like we're going to be printing new tickets.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be wise to put a QR code on the new tickets that lists the fines and the parameters?
They are actually printed, they're right on the ticket itself.
They are?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
They are now. When I redesigned the ticket, working with our superintendent of highway and code enforcement folks, we switch it to it's a checkbox, and then it has the proper section of code next to there, because that was one of the problems. One of the it used to have a blanket section of code, but some of the stuff is in different sections of code. So and it has it right next to there. One of the things that was noted when you read the fine for handicap parking, it says this is the range of the fine, and then it has an asterisk that says there's an additional I think it's $25 surcharge for the state, or 15, I don't remember, whatever the additional surcharge is. In the ticket, it's the other way. The ticket shows the range includes the surcharge, because otherwise we were afraid someone who's going to go to pay by mail misses the asterisk, doesn't include the surcharge.
Right.
So that's why the only discrepancy on the ticket, it includes the surcharge. On the fine schedule, we did not. We identified the thing separate, but
Thank you. I didn't
it
know
has
that.
it right on there, including we had a level for remit. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible.
Yep. Sounds good.
I think that's also, for the record, a statement that Councilmember Page has never received a parking ticket.
Yeah.
That's true.
Any further comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca.
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 20-404, 2025 to extend the response deadline for the Henrietta Municipal Golf Course Restaurant Operator RFP.
Second.
So, as we discussed at the, workshop, we did not receive responses. However, two individuals indicated that they were contemplating responding. At this point, we've obviously missed the window to start construction before the winter. So to be honest, we have plenty of time. So our thought was, hey, let's extend it till January 12th, see if any come in. Because, even if we made the decision today, we couldn't start the smaller clubhouse now
Right.
before the winter. So, let's wait, see what happens. It'd be great if we can find a restaurant willing to come in here, at a price that works. So this gives plenty of time for those, respondents to, the two who indicated that they might have responded if they had a little bit more time. This gives them plenty of time to get that in. Hopefully it's not too much time that they forget about it. But one of the reasons we went for January 12th is we figured they're probably shut out for the holidays. It gives them almost 2 weeks after the holidays to get the stuff together and in. So any questions on that?
Good idea.
And I know this one wasn't on, like I said, because it came out of that discussion, but we had to check with Dan as to what we could and couldn't do in terms of, so this made the most sense from a legal standpoint, so. And
Yeah, I remember talking about it workshop.
Yeah.
Dan was on, let us know. That's good.
Yeah, I did. I reviewed the request for proposal and, New York State General Municipal Law, as well as our own procurement policy. And although the RFP process that was utilized in this case, it mirrors a bid process. It is not a true formal bid process.
Okay.
It's not governed under GML 103. There's no expenditure of public fund. So it's an RFP, and it's my opinion that you can extend the deadlines by resolution.
Great. Thanks for looking into it, Dan.
any other questions, comments? And hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
I would take this one, Joe, but I see your name. I got it. Fellow board members, have resolution 405, 2025 to accept the deficient dedication of a portion of the roadways of the Lehigh Ridge subdivision, section 2.
Second.
So this one was a last minute addition. So as I mentioned, we have this is essentially the extension of Authors Avenue to the south. Because of the early winter, it's been tough for the developers to get a paving crew to get out there and get it done. We checked with our superintendent of highways, checked with the Villager Paving who we use to, and they will be able to do it Tuesday.
That's great.
So we basically said we can do that if they essentially do the deficient dedication. We've got the Craig Eckert, Deputy Town Supervisor, put together the essentially the station marks as to what portion of road is going to be dedicated. We'll approve it, and then we will fully paper it with a full meets and bounds later on.
Great.
But we wanted to take the deficient dedication so that we can pave it and then be able to plow it this winter.
Great.
Any other questions on that?
Way to get it done.
So, and thank you to Jenny, who waited to the last minute so we could get this on the agenda. So,
Thanks,
Jenny Miranda, Deputy Town Clerk. Any other questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Do we have any committee or miscellaneous reports from the town board?
I got a chance to meet with the youth board last week, and they did a review of the work that was done on Make a Difference Day on November 1st. It's an incredibly impressive amount of work, the sheer volume, boxes of food, the amount of work that was done for patients in area hospitals. It really speaks to the generosity of not only our town residents, but also the community-based organizations that work with them. Tremendous amount of work, not only from the town, but the partnership with the school district. Certainly there were organizations in neighboring towns also. And I wanted to give some credit, especially to two of the youth members on the youth board. They're both seniors at the high school, Sybil Montero and Simra Hamad. It seems like whenever there's a good idea that somebody has that needs the human capital involved in it, they know an organization that is willing and able to help that out. I really think a strong example of the best of what we have here in our community. Got some events coming up also that are holiday related. On November 30th, there is Sunday. There is the Breakfast with Santa pancake supper, pancake breakfast, excuse me, at the Senior Center. There is Cookies and Cocoa with Santa at the Rec Center on Saturday, December 6th, and Holiday Lights and Magic coming up on December 6th also.
I attended the school board meeting last night, and the two major topics were the presentation of their capital reserve plans for the following year. And also they did a review of their educational long-range plan of about 4 years, showing pluses and minuses and little changes, but it's a very, very good meeting.
Good. Two things. I'd like to thank our chairman of the Historic Site Committee, Gary Goodrich, for all his dedication and working through and being patient with our board to get stuff really to a point where it'll go through for the West Historic District. Thanks, Gary, for your hard work and dedication. And tonight, if I wasn't working here, I'd be at the Rec Center. They have the Elks Lodge free throw shooting contest tonight. And it's a good event. I think it's from 8 to 13-year-olds, boys and girls, and they shoot free throws and they go on regionally. I know some kids. I think Gronke's son went to Philadelphia shooting free throws. Remember Dave Gronke?
Yeah.
And all my kids participated. I volunteered before, so I'll go stop by there and see if they're still doing what we're done.
They've been doing that for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Long time.
I won't, because unless the object is to hit the rim. We get 1 point for hitting the rim, then I can do.
I heard you were quite a non-athlete.
Oh, I'm actually an okay athlete, just not in basketball. I'm very good at hitting the rim. I just
This makes perfect.
at least it's no air balls, but I just can't seem to get them to
I saw a
drop.
few air boys last night at Syracuse University. Got a lot of free throws and didn't hit the rim.
So a couple things, this afternoon this morning I was at a, symposium, regarding the Micron semiconductor facility that's going in. It was a collaborative effort between RIT, U of R, Syracuse University, University of Buffalo, and a couple other schools, including a number of community colleges, as well as the SEMI Foundation. You know, one of the things, there's a lot of people, afraid in various majors, afraid of the impacts of, AI. My son's in, computer science, and, you know, that's the thing, they struggle to find co-ops. And, an industry that not only is not heavily affected by AI, but is actually benefiting from it because of the high demand on the chips is the semiconductor industry. So this is, you know, one of the things they look at. There is a shortfall of over 100,000 employees projected in the next 3 years in the semiconductor industry, especially as this facility comes online. When this is online, between this and some of the other facilities in here, 1/4, 25% of all chips manufactured in the United States will be manufactured within a 150-mile radius of Rochester.
That's Clay Road in Clay, right? Clay, New York.
That's in Clay, New York. Yeah. And so one of the things I'll mention, if you have a college-bound student and they're looking for something, degrees like micro electronic engineering, 100% placement rate. That means every single student who graduates is in a job or in a advanced degree within the first 6 months of graduation. Average starting salary is over $110,000 with the BS.
Yeah.
What's amazing is they have trouble filling their freshman classes. The problem is that the guidance counselors just don't know about the major. So that's what the SEMI Foundation is. It's a conglomerate of supported by industry to try to get the word out and to try to teach people. But I will also point out, for those whose kids aren't college, you know, a 4-year degree might not be the right thing for them. For every engineer they're going to hire 5 technicians.
Yeah.
Right. They need the people to work the fabs, but they also need HVAC equipment. Right. If you think about the amount of equipment that's in that clean room, plumbers, electricians, skilled trades, they are going to need a massive number of skilled trades. Some of those are 2-year programs at your community colleges, and that's why a bunch of the community colleges in the area are there. When they look at, they just can't possibly produce enough. Each one can't possibly produce enough in just like the Onondaga, which is where the area is. So they're reaching to all the community colleges across. Basically, this is a consortium from Syracuse to Buffalo, down to Corning and Binghamton. So, you know, again, high paying job. You know, a lot of these jobs, these are, you know, building generational wealth.
Right.
And then there's also, again, some of the skilled trades that don't even require a 2-year degree. You go to trade school, you apprentice, and you come online. So again, a lot of opportunity. Very excited about the future here with RIT and U of R, especially U of R optics. As you can imagine, there's a lot of optics involved in photolithography, stereolithography, ion implantation. There's a lot of just amazing technology involved in this. So very exciting opportunity for this area, and especially for our youth. Again, if you're technically inclined and you're want to look at a potential career that's again not just more resistant to AI replacement, but actually benefiting from it, that's a potential career for you.
And they held that at RIT?
This was at RIT today, yeah. Couple other notes. Andrea Guarino in our rec center was recognized by the New York State Parks and Recreation as the Young Professional of the Year. So congratulations to Andrea.
Congrats, Andrea.
And then I want to read to you an email I received this morning. It's a great way to start the day. So it's from Chuck Crosby. Says, I want to acknowledge one of our town's DPW employees that stopped his truck, turned on his yellow caution lights, walked across Calkins Road while putting on his high visibility vest, and escorted an elderly woman across both Calkins and across Highland to the sidewalk along the west side. The pedestrian was struggling to stay upright, very frail, and pushing a wheeled walker. The employee that drove I won't go into that, they described the thing, but the individual, it was gratifying to witness his quick response to a fellow resident. The entire town should tell him thank you. So doing that publicly.
Great job.
Do we have anything from the public? Any comments?
Kevin Yost, 1470 Meadow Road. Good evening again. I know that in the late 2000s, early 2010s, the traffic nightmare along Jefferson Road was alleviated considerably when that road was redone. The medians and the U-turn lanes that also doubled as left-hand turn lanes. And the redoing of the traffic lights and a new traffic light in front of the regional markets and entrance exit on the Jefferson Road. And that was made, of course, was made possible the funding of the Transportation Development District approved by the state legislature that the town had pushed in the early to mid 90s under the Breeze administration. But I do know in the early to mid 2000s, one of the two individuals whose served in a town board went on to the county legislature and tried to be town supervisor. Had floated a couple of them ideas to mitigate some traffic there. I don't know if there's some necessary, if they're even possible. And like I said, I don't know if they're even necessary now that Jefferson Road was redone and the flow problem pretty much alleviated, but extending Mushroom Boulevard out to J. Scuddy Boulevard in front of the old Gander Mountain and in front of the Marlin Amusement BJ's between Raymore and Flanagan Park Avenue Bike Shop across Western Road, Brighton Henry Town Line Plaza, and then it's at the Tile Shop Plaza and Jefferson Plaza. And I doubt that the state DOT would allow putting a traffic light there on Western Road to allow left turns on either side, because it's so in such close proximity to two traffic lights, Jefferson Road to the south and Brighton Henry Town Road to the north, and then a private drive between whoever owns the properties between them, Ashley Furniture and Valley City Furniture along the north edge of Orville's Appliances out to Marketplace area to the west end of Strassenberg Drive, and then
So I can let you know, we do have some preliminary plans to actually connect J. Scuddy and Mushroom. In the former Gander Mountain was acquired by Benderson, who owns the plaza to the east of that. And in addition, in the back corner there, they have plans to put in a warehouse facility. And as part of that site plan, we included an extension of Mushroom Boulevard through that property and around Gander Mountain. So if you look, they actually adjusted the parking lot curbs for the former Gander Mountain. It's now, I think, Brick Furniture.
Yes.
And that's to accommodate that future. We had initial approval from the folks from who owns the J. Scuddy Boulevard itself. There's a delay that I won't go into because it's not necessarily public information right now, but that is something we're looking at, and we wouldn't take the portion out to West Henrietta Road at this time because there's not a good, as you point out, there's not a good connection. If there was a way to line that up with the exit from Jefferson Plaza, which is the one across the street from
Southtown.
Southtown, that might make sense, but
Mhm.
without that, it's too much twisting and turning through essentially parking lots. But we would take the portion essentially up to just before the former Gander, it would turn right and then cut over to Mushroom Boulevard. The rest of that would stay private. But I don't have a schedule for that because again, it's dependent upon them dedicating that to us. We're not planning to purchase any of that. We would have them dedicated to us and we would take it over as a public road. So that is in the plans. But again, it's dependent upon, we've got two of the property owners are on board. We just have to get the third one to finally sign it over. So.
Okay, and then also, I think in mid-90s, there was a plan, there was a plan to, extend Marketplace Drive between where now, well, just north of where now Lowe's is out from Western Road to be a conservation easement along either side of Red Creek. And I know one time, not long after, the people West Brighton along the Creighton Road corridor, the residents had a canoe trip to protest that are afraid of flooding, but then the easement would along either side of Red Creek would keep that from happening likely.
Yeah, so that one, you run into wetland issues. That's the big issue with that. You could, in theory, connect over. There just hasn't been much demand for it because so much of that property is wetland. It's not usable property, so I don't know that that one will ever happen.
And then also, all the county and the CSX railroad tracks, I don't know if it's physically possible. Obviously, Brighton and Henry Townley Road and South Clinton Avenue on the bright side are county right of ways, and Ridgeland Road is a town and commons way or town rights of way, but connect Brighton and Henry Townley Road with Ridgeland, become an extension of the county right of way. South Clinton, there's a way to have a viaduct, either underpass or overpass the CSX tracks, like there is Clay Road under right the just along the west end of the Pulsapeter plant, but I don't but the lay of the land there is different than where it is Clay Road, so I don't know if it's possible to have an underpass or overpass there.
Yeah, I've not heard any interest or discussion of that one, so I'm not.
That wasn't his idea. That was strictly my idea for the last 20-25 years or so. And especially since about 20 years was when they reconnected Clay Road to Barton and Chandler, put a new overpass after a 25-year absence.
Right.
Thanks, Kev.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if that one makes sense, but I've not heard anyone. Part of it also comes into how much that's private property. So, anything else? Then hearing and seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.